Monday started the end of cash bail in Illinois, statewide being the first states to do so, and a lot of reaction from all over, including from up in Chicago and here in Springfield, and even reaction to those who have concerns of the end of cash bail. So ultimately what this does is it says that money bond is no more in Illinois. Certain types of offenses can be held without bond, and then you've got lower level crimes that people can be processed through the jails and then released pending trial. And if they don't show up to their trial date, then there could be some warrants issued. But you've got this overall question of safety and different perspectives as to whether or not the end of cash bail is actually going to make the state safer, or if it's going to lead to the possibility of more crimes. So let's go ahead and hear now from the proponents on this. Yesterday at the Illinois State House, you had Democrats with the Network for Pretrial Fairness making their case for no cash bail ending yesterday. Here's State Representative Carol Ammons breaking down why she thinks this is so important and groundbreaking for the criminal justice system.
I am so honored to stand here today. This is a long time coming. I began working on pretrial fairness in 2017 with an organization called 3 Days Count out of Washington, D.C. It's a national organization that has been making this argument for many generations, actually, and we're kind of behind the times in implementation of a fair justice system that matches our Constitution federally and our state constitution. And so for my community members who are here, who've been working on this issue for a very long time, I am honored to stand with you today, representing the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus and the Illinois General Assembly. I am thankful to our members, those who voted for and against this legislation, those who were not sure that this is the right thing to do. 60+ organizations worked on this for multiple years because we knew it was the right thing to do, and it aligned with the constitutional protections that every citizen is supposed to be guaranteed. But that is not always the case, and that is not always how it works out. And so I am honored that our governor, back in 2020, actually, he made ending money bond one of his administration's top 3 priorities. The bail coalition that came together, the Coalition to End Money Bond, and the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice, we thank you for your continuous fight over many years. And I want the public to understand that when we began to try to make legislative change, sometimes it takes many years to get to this point. It has stood all of the inspection. And we hope that people will take this and utilize it in the most positive of ways and not use backdoor methods to prevent people from getting justice in our courts. Every member of the State's Attorneys Association has a responsibility to call on its members to cease all attempts at the continued deliberate obstruction of this law once it's implemented as of today. The General Assembly will not walk away from this process. It has taken many years for us to simply follow the Constitution. And what the Constitution tells us is that cash was always supposed to be the last option. It was never supposed to be the first option, and it was never supposed to be building budgets for county jails and courts.
So again, that's Urbana Democratic State Representative Carol Ammons laying out why she thinks this is a monumentous day for the criminal justice system in Illinois. But Republicans responding, State Senator Terry Bryant sounding off on this, essentially saying that this is not good for victims.
The final implementation of the Safety Act and the abolishment of cash bail. Today, Illinois begins its ill-advised experiment, and it becomes the first state in the nation to completely eliminate cash bail in exchange for a system that promises to be more fair. But fair for who? Because it's certainly not fair for our county court systems, many that will now not even be able to fund keeping criminals behind bars. And it's definitely not fair for the residents who could be forced to pay higher taxes for the same exact systems, but it'll be a less safe system. But most importantly, it's absolutely not fair for the victims of crime. From restitution payment to victim services, Bonds and fees often contribute to vital services to help victims recover from their trauma. For example, over a third of convicted sex offenders' fees go to the Child Advocacy Center Fund, the Violent Crime Victims Assistance Fund, the Sexual Assault Services Fund, and the Domestic Violence Shelter Fund. Additionally, $2.5 million in Illinois bond money was applied to victim restitution in 2021. The SAFETY Act takes away this funding without a clear way for many counties to replace it. Does that sound fair for the victim? These are just a few examples of many funding and logistical gaps the legislature has yet to fill in. Despite repeated Republican calls to address these many injustices, the Democratic majority refuses to address these serious safety and financial concerns. The Senate Republicans will continue to call for reform and help support our local courts. Today, the governor and his allies will be taking a victory lap on their first in the nation criminal justice system overhaul. But to me, and many of the people we represent, defunding our courts, limiting victim services, and making law-abiding citizens pay for criminals' bail with their taxes is just not justice. Now, tell me, does that sound?
So, again, that's Terry Bryant. She's a Republican from Murfreesboro, state senator, sounding off on how she feels this is a problematic law that went into effect yesterday. The ACLU of Illinois' Ben Riddell, he was with Carol Ammons yesterday and responded directly to that assertion about the cash bond no longer being available, and that's hurting restitution for victims. Here's Ben Riddell laying out his response to Murfreesboro Republican State Senator Terry Bryant.
Well, so restitution is there is some portion of restitution that gets paid like other fines and fees associated with court cases that is often taken out of people's money bond. And so you had asked earlier about, do people get their money back after if they're found innocent or at the end of the case? The fact is, people don't get most of their money back because it ends up going to a lot of fines and fees. But an analysis of how that pie is sliced shows that it's quite a small percentage of that goes to pay restitution. I will say that nothing about the Pretrial Fairness Act takes away the responsibility of a person who's found guilty of a crime to pay restitution that's been ordered by the court. We don't take it out of their pocket on the front end, though, when they've been just accused of the crime. We wait till they've been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, which is how it ought to work.
So that's just some of the back and forth. What are the next steps here? Obviously, there's going to be monitoring of what the court system does with all of this and what prosecutors do with all of this. But what about the idea of changing it, amending it, repealing it even? We'll hear about that coming up next year with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. I'm Greg Bishop. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on air. All right, back at it and hearing some of the back and forth about the end of money bond in Illinois. Yesterday was the day statewide money bond is no longer an option, not even for, the more serious charges against individuals. They can't bond out. And those supporting the idea say it's about making the criminal justice system more equitable, and saying that poor people shouldn't languish behind bars with the presumption of innocence until proven guilty just because they can't afford to bail themselves out. One of the state senators who helped construct this law is State Senator Robert Peters, a Democrat out of Chicago, and he was with a whole bunch of other Democrats, from Kim Foxx to Speaker Welch to Senate President Don Harmon and others, up in Chicago yesterday morning, celebrating the beginning of cash bail ending. And he said that, moving forward, there's always going to be things to tweak and to work on, but he talked about what he thinks are some of the next steps that are necessary.
I mean, I think you could say about the criminal justice system that there's 100 things that could be the next thing. I think it's to really monitor how this goes. I've always had deep concerns about whether, people are going too far when it comes to electronic monitoring. But overall, when I think about this, we're going to watch and pay attention to how this goes to make sure that it's implemented in every county throughout the state. I want to say that there have been people who've been speaking out throughout this state, who seem like they're hinting that they may not implement this fairly. And so what I care most about is that in every corner of this state, that we fundamentally focus on the safety and the fairness and the equality that everyone deserves in Illinois, and that this gets implemented in a fair and just manner. So to me, the most important next step is that whether you're in Madison County or Cook County, you have a fair and just system. And in fact, whether you're in the southern tip of Illinois or all the way up to the northern parts of Illinois, that in every zip code, you have the safety that you deserve. That's fundamentally what this is about. Public safety for all and not a few, and it should not matter what's in your wallet. What should matter is how you're able to go home and live your life and be able to be with your kids and not locked up simply because you're poor. So that, to me, is the key next step that we have here. Thank you.
But some would argue you're getting locked up not because you're poor, but because you're accused of a crime and you are behind bars because you couldn't meet the bond requirements. But regardless, that's an argument that was being made as of Sunday. But as of yesterday, no more cash bond in the state of Illinois. ACLU of Illinois' Ben Riddell, he talked about what he thinks are some of the hurdles that are expected moving forward with the end of cash bond.
Well, I think, there have been several stories in the media about public defenders and the kind of unreasonable caseloads that they have, and the fact that some of the smaller counties don't even have their own public defender. And so I think that that making sure that we build up our public defense to and that's an ongoing issue irrespective of the Pretrial Fairness Act. That's a thing that this state needs to tackle. But if you ask me where I see, the most potential for issues, it's there.
So again, Ben Riddell with the ACLU saying that he sees the hurdle being the public defenders and getting them in place to where they can defend those who can't get the representation that they need. Jack Campbell, sheriff of Sangamon County, when we talked with him on Friday, he said he anticipates there could be an increase in crime, and he wants to possibly take that information to the legislature for some changes.
I really think that whenever I think the legislature sees a rise in the crime rates in Illinois, that maybe they'll go back and maybe repeal it, maybe work on reform that needs to happen.
But Carol Ammons, Democrat from Urbana, she said that there is no going back. Here's some of what she said to the idea of those who might be looking to change or modify the Safety Act moving forward and the Pretrial Fairness Act moving forward.
And as we implement every single law in the state of Illinois, sometimes there's something wrong with it, or we need to go back and do X, Y, and Z. We will always listen to our stakeholders and try to make sure that we're implementing the law in the fairest of ways. But we will not repeal. We will not do backdoor practices in the next General Assembly to try to unravel this one. We will be ever vigilant and diligent in our work to oversee the implementation of this.
So, again, that's just some of the back and forth from yesterday and on Friday in anticipation of Monday's end of cash bail. We'll hear a lot more about this, including direct response to Springfield Mayor Misty Buscher and more response to Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell with their concerns as the advocates respond to those questions that were raised. So we'll get to that a little bit later on here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.